Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I'm going to be the old guy in the room on this one, although I think some people will agree with me. Out of Washington State, from KIRO or Cairo 7, the news staff there, E. Barber sent this to me. State lawmakers consider making driver's ed requirement for those under 24 years old. Here's the deal. I'm going to be the old man shaking his fist at clouds because I do think that driver's ed should be required. And I also think it should be taught in schools. I think it should be part of the curriculum. And yes, I think our tax dollars should pay for it. And so when I was a youngster at the age of 15, I remember going up to and registering for driver's ed at the local high school. And then that summer, when I could have been out riding my bike or playing wiffle ball, I was taking driver's ed classes and did that for a couple weeks, did the road test, did all that stuff, got my permit, and had my permit for quite some time, got a lot of time driving in a green Gremlin, no less. And then, of course, when I turned 16, the day I turned 16, I went to the Secretary of State's office in Birmingham, Michigan. No relation to this. This is a different state, by the way, but another story altogether. And got my driver's license, and I've been driving ever since. Now, I understand things have changed. And, of course, I represent a lot of people who've had issues with their driving tickets and so on. And I know that things have changed, and it is now the case that many schools in many states don't offer driver's training as part of the education. They go, oh, that's been privatized now. So it's not part of the school. You go to this driving school, and you do that. And so in Michigan, they revamped the law entirely. And so now you go to driving school for a couple weeks, and it's taught privately at some strip mall or something, and they take you out. And then you finish phase 1, and you're supposed to get some time driving with other people. And then you go back for phase 2, I guess. And then there's some tests involved. And then after you do that, then you can go and take your driver's test to get your permit. Or is it your license? I don't even know. It's confusing. It's confusing. And the point is, it used to be much simpler and everybody did it. And now there's some people out there who say, but Steve, what if I have no kids? What if I have no children? Why should I be paying to educate other people's kids about how to drive? Because you're sharing the road with them. I want drivers on the road with me to know how to drive. And so I've always been a big supporter of education. And when I say education, notice I don't qualify it. I've never come on here and said I'm a supporter only of higher education. I'm only a supporter of this education or that. No, education. People who get an education are bettering themselves, and I believe it helps all of society if the people around you have educated themselves for whatever, for any topic. So if you said, Steve, you don't have any kids, and you're on the road, the people around you, you still want them educated. They don't have to be your kids. You want them educated on how to drive, okay? I mean, that seems to me to be more important than the people who say, I shouldn't have to pay school taxes because I've got no kids. So teaching them math and writing and whatever else, well, I still think it helps society to have kids educated, okay? So I think that that's an important thing. And I think part of that education should involve driver's training. So state lawmakers in Washington appear to be agreeing with me on this one. I'm not in Washington, but still. And so taking driver's ed used to be something every public school student used to do in school in our state, Washington. But 20 years ago, funding was pulled. That we'll save money. We'll save money by not paying for driver's ed. We ain't saving money. Because guess what? The cost of a few other things went up and took away whatever savings you thought you had. Now, driver's ed is private business and can be expensive. So most new 18 to 24-year-old drivers in Washington have never taken driver's ed. So the way it works, you can take driver's ed and go in and get a license before you turn 18, or you can walk in off the street at 18, take the test, and if you pass it, boom, you're a driver. But you never had any training. Well, you got that little booklet they hand out, and you studied it. And you passed the test. It's not that hard of a test. So now state lawmakers in Washington want to make taking driver's ed a requirement again for every driver under the age of 24. And here's why. Car crashes are the number one cause of death for 16 to 21-year-olds. Number one cause of death? Car crashes. The State Traffic Safety Commission says the majority of drivers involved in fatal crashes in Washington are 21 to 25 years old. 21 to 25 years old. They found that drivers that age who didn't take driver's ed had a 70% higher rate of crashes where people get hurt or killed. Don't get me wrong, you can have a kid take driver's ed and still go out and do something stupid. You can, but it will reduce the odds of it happening. And I think that's a good thing. So when you're 18 or older, driver's ed is not legally required, but you can take it if you want to spend $500 or $600 on classes, which most people go, I don't have to take the class and it's $500 or $600. Why spend the money? The next big question is, will the state offer to help pay for the courses or offer to pay for driver's ed completely? That's the way it used to be in public schools. Lawmakers are talking about contracting with those private driving schools, but those details are still being worked out. So I remember when they passed this law in Michigan, it was about 20 years ago, so I was an attorney. And of course, I have my own personal experience to look back on. And I took driver's ed, and a bunch of my friends took it at the same time I did. So I got friends in the class. We took driver's ed together. It was taught by a couple of teachers from the local high school who decided to volunteer their time in the summertime. And I know they get paid for it, but they would teach driver's ed in the summertime and earn some extra money. And in fact, the high school I took it at had a course out behind the school that was dedicated to driver's ed. It's like a big parking lot, but they'd painted like lanes and stuff in so you could practice. And every year they had a fleet of cars that they got from some local car dealership, and they would be driven around this little lot back there. And you learned how to drive in those cars. And of course, they showed you the movies, Death on the Highway, all that kind of stuff. But think of all the times you've been driving and you've seen somebody do something ridiculously idiotic, and then you see it's a young driver. And again, I've seen adults do ridiculously idiotic things also. So I'm just saying I think it would be a good thing if everyone out there who is about to become a driver took a class and got the license after taking the class and did it this way. Because unfortunately what happened is, to save money, they took it out of the schools and said, well, if you want to, you can pay for it over here at the strip mall driving school. A lot of parents go, I can't afford that, and I'm not going to do that. They don't do it. They tell the kid, well, wait till you're 18. When you turn 18, you just walk in and take the test. You know, and there's a couple different things you may or may not have to do depending on what state you're in, but that's what happens. And so you have to understand from an economic viewpoint, people's perception is that it used to be baked into the school costs. So they didn't feel the pain of paying for it, although they were paying for it. But when you yanked it out of there and made it private and put it over here, people go, oh, that's going to cost $500 or $600. I can't afford that. Tell you what, we'll skip that. And I've met a lot of kids. I've talked to kids 16, 17 years old who go, man, I don't need a driver's license. I go, well, you know, there's a good chance you're going to need one eventually. I understand there's places you can live, especially in America. There's some places you can live. And then, of course, in Europe, many places you can live. But generally speaking, living in the Midwest, mass transit? No. What's that? Got to get a car. And so you need a driver's license. And so I know some people who just said, skip it. I'll wait till I turn 18. I'll get the license and I'll wing it then. And that's where a lot of these car accidents come from. So I'm a big believer, like I said, in education. And by the way, I don't mind paying for it. So I have always voted in favor of school millages. It didn't matter whether or not I had kids in those schools. I don't care. I personally think education is a big, good thing. So I've mentioned before, grandfather, grandmother, father, mother, myself, all teachers at one time or another. I taught law school and I taught an undergraduate history class at U of D a couple times. And so I'm a big believer in education. And I'm not saying just higher education. No. Education. And I think that we'd all be better off if the drivers around us had all taken driver's ed. And it used to be a rite of passage. I think it should become one again. So I salute the lawmakers of Washington who are considering making driver's ed a requirement for those under 24 years old. But I also think it should be put back into the schools. The problem is, once you take it out of the schools and make it privatized, Now you've got companies with a vested interest going, well, hey, wait, we set up these schools now. You can't take that away from us. So there's going to be some fights on that. We'll see what happens. But Barber, thanks for sending that from KIRO or Cairo 7 news staff. State lawmakers consider making driver's ed a requirement for those under 24 years old. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. What, after all, is a halo? It's only one more thing to keep clean.